Pioneer Made to Grow podcast. My name's Andrew Campbell, and we're in Denver, Colorado today at Commodity Classic as part of the Canadian Yield Hero Challenge program. With me today, we've got a great group, a couple of agronomists, a couple of growers, all taking part in the Yield Hero program, which includes a trip to Denver if you win. So that's kind of a fun deal. With me today, we've got Colleen, an area agronomist with Pioneer from Saskatchewan. We've got Dallas, a grower from central Alberta. Maggie is a grower from southwestern Ontario. And Greg, an area agronomist also in southwestern Ontario. Thanks, everybody, for taking some time out here in Denver and joining the podcast. Let's start. I'm going to start with you, Maggie, because it's one of those things where being part of the Yield Hero program is something new for you. I'm curious, outside of, I know there's always the conversation in case of, you should do this, Maggie, as one of those good reasons, but you didn't have to say yes. Why'd you say yes?
I thought it was a good opportunity for us to have access to growers that are all trying to push and grow and be bigger. Obviously with the support of Greg, and we're always trying to push the envelope and push bushels. And yeah, I thought it was a good opportunity to have access to people with the same mindset. So yeah.
Dallas, is this your first go at the Yield Hero program?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Why'd you say yes?
I actually didn't even know I was in it until
You're just so good.
No, just the way the whole season worked out with Alberta this year. It kind of was, just kind of luck that I wound up being in there. So yeah.
So then, out of the program, basically, what were some of the things that went along the way once you did figure out you were in?
Yeah. No, so we did some plots for them, and we were able to use some of the data from the plots the yields from the plots to make that work. So that's how we wound up in there. So.
Maggie, what about you in terms of it's kind of a full growing season program? What was part of it?
It was actually didn't require a whole lot of extra work, I guess I would say, because we already are fairly intensively managing our corn acres. But Greg let us know pretty early, and we kind of picked a field that we thought didn't have like a crazy amount of variability and would give us a good large look at some potential to possibly win. And yeah, it was pretty easy. We did some stand counts, a couple field walks. Greg flew the drone a couple times. So it's pretty low key, actually. Yeah.
Colleen, in terms of when you are thinking and when you are working with growers, over Yield Hero, I'm just kind of curious, what's that process look like from a standpoint in Western Canada to just make sure that, one, we're obviously picking great fields that have lots of potential, but for those growers, what's kind of their role in the program?
Well, I think a lot of it just self-selects, to be honest. These growers are super proud of the Pioneer canola hybrids that they're putting in. They see a field that's coming along phenomenally. Maybe we have a trial set up there. Maybe it's a side-by-side that some of them are doing on their own. I mean, these are, just like the growers you got up here today, growers that are pushing the envelope, that are really wanting to see how the genetics are going to work and how they can maximize them on their farm. And, they kind of put their hands up a lot of times with the agencies to say, like, hey, you got to get out here. We have to do a weigh on this. Let's take a look at it a couple times a year and maybe submit it for Yield Hero and get to go on a fun trip. So I think the whole process just really lends well to those high-yielding growers and bringing them together to do something like this.
It sounds pretty familiar, Greg, from an Eastern Canadian perspective, particularly with that, working together, that growers that are already kind of maybe pushing the envelope, and then working with the products and the Pioneer team to try to do even better.
Yeah, I think obviously for us in Eastern Ontario, we're all pretty competitive too, right? Whether that's agronomists and, within Pioneer, myself and my coworkers are competitive, but our growers are too, right? When you think about the amount of coffee shop talk that goes on, right? It's competitive. There's a lot that is shared to learn and grow together, right? And we've seen such amazing yield enhancement over the last number of years, right? As especially in corn, right? Things have really kind of taken off. And I think so it's exciting for all of us as part of the program to look at what are the things we can do to push this even further, right? And I think that's where the program really came to life in Eastern Canada this year. And it was a trial program for us, and things are continuing to change as we go forward. But working with growers like Maggie to identify like growers who are already doing amazing, what more can we do? Where can we push even further? It was really, really rewarding this year.
So then, Dallas, in terms of, for your farm, obviously weather always plays that really important role. But I'm kind of curious in terms of what your strategy is in general for growing canola and to try to be able to push those yields as high as possible.
So I guess it'd be, work with our seed rep to get the right variety in there, and then getting with our agronomist to make sure we got the fertility in place that's needed for it, and just hope we got an extra inch of rain that nobody else did this year, so that helped everything out work out so good. So,
well, and especially in your neck of the woods, that extra inch of rain does a pile.
That made all the difference. I mean, we were from what we got there down to half of that, and so we had canola out yielding wheat this year, just depending on where the field was at. So, yeah.
I know, Maggie, for you, timely rains also, would have been beneficial. But I'm curious in terms of, through the growing season, did being a part of this program change at least your outlook on a couple of those fields or a couple of those plots that maybe you thought, this maybe could be a winner?
Yeah, for sure. And also, we spoke to weather. We didn't know growing when we signed up for this what the year would look like, but then we had like a perfect year to grow corn. Like I know our area wasn't the same as some parts, but perfect rains, like we couldn't have asked for. We did have a backup plan, like if it didn't go well, like that was fine too.
Nerve-wracking in the spring,
yeah,
to be honest.
We didn't really know what was gonna happen, but we had great stand come up. We started clean, and it just held well all year.
We had plan A, and then we had plan B, and with corn, right? Part of plan A is push as long a maturity for yield as we can, but in Ontario, when things go backwards and get wet, I mean, we planted, I think it was May 10th, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, that was about the drop dead date for the maturity we wanted for our area. Now, at the end of the year, it turns out we could have gone probably longer, but had we, playing the averages, that was, we were a little terrified that we were going to have to go to plan B and drop maturity ranges at some point. But
and even at the end, I was nervous because we usually can get an earlier frost, and I'm watching pulling back cobs and like, we're not black layered yet, but it ended up finishing, and it was good.
Then Colleen from Western Canada, I'm kind of curious. Dallas obviously got that extra inch of rain, which was a huge benefit. There must be other growers that take part in the contest that maybe do push things a little differently too, because heck, it comes with a free trip, so why not? Or at least that bragging right that you had high yields. What are some of the growers in Saskatchewan doing when they take part in that program?
Oh, wow. Well, I think, a lot of them are already doing a lot of the things to begin with, and they just choose to maybe enter for Yield Hero when things are looking good. We kind of do it a little bit differently than the East right now, but different things that they look at. I guess we had some guys on the panel today just talk about really dialing in their seeding rates, slowing down, getting that, solid plant population up. Pushing fertility is always going to be one. So, again, not necessarily that they're doing it to be a yield hero, but to your point, if that can be a side effect, it's a pretty great thing. And of course, helping ROI too. A big thing for us this year in Saskatchewan particularly was fungicide application. So we did have a couple growers here today that talked about, getting 8 to 9 inches of rain, which is pretty high rains for us during that growing season. We had pretty high disease pressure. Sclerotinia was one that, they mentioned was a huge benefit to have sprayed for this year. So some of those plots, I think, came into the Yield Hero contest. One of my growers talked about that. So that was huge. And then, of course, Pioneer seed genetics just have such great background disease resistance that really helped just with the pressure that we had this year. We had some products out in the field that just, outstanding blackleg resistance on them. Clubroot, of course, is a given, and some sclerotolerance in the background is never going to be a bad thing when you get that high pressure. So, those plots, when growers see them lining up like that, that's where the rep's going to get the call. it's kind of different from you guys. It's start the truck, bring the wagon. I want to maybe get a trip to Denver.
Well, then I'm kind of curious, Dallas, from your perspective. There's been lots of information thrown around. Just today here at this meeting, a lot of really interesting strategies, I thought, from canola growers, but also from other growers, just in how they attack their farm. How they attack those acres. I'm curious. Is there something that you've taken away from Yield Hero so far in Dallas that you say, oh, when we go home, or maybe even on the plane ride home, we might chat about, is there something that we want to do a little bit differently going into 2026 just to try something new?
I think we'll that one first.
Of course you can. Maggie. I'm curious about you because we saw, and from your standpoint, we had the top soybean grower here growing over 200 bushel soybeans. The top corn winner is over 400 bushels. Here. What do you take away from something like this that you look into the next year to say, what, we might not be looking for 200 bushel beans, but gosh, something that somebody said kind of hit home, and I might want to talk about that when I get home.
Yeah, I think a common thing from these people who are the highest producers I take away is like your start and your potential is highest right at the beginning, and if you do everything you can to set yourself up for a season, that's I think one of the most important things. And I think sometimes we forget that when we're in spring and it gets hectic and busy and you just kind of want to push through. But if you do something in the spring that robs yourself of the opportunity, then so I'd say that's probably my biggest takeaway, maybe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about that, Dallas, in terms of what the potential is and how it goes down. Is there something that you think you might do a little bit differently?
Yeah, like Maggie said, just not get in the rush. It's not keep reminding myself it's not a race. It's, we're always trying to get out there early and push things. But yeah, just take your time and make sure you're doing a proper job and getting it set in place.
Now, if I asked you that again when you're seeding and all of these say they do not drive faster no matter what, will I be able to hold you to that?
No.
No. And it is honest.
When the clouds are coming in and you just want to get it done, it's time.
Yeah. You do. And it is something, when we do talk about those, I always find it is interesting that, it works really well in those great growing seasons. When you get that extra little bit of rain, when it's the perfect corn growing season, it can work out well. It's just maybe not going to work out every single year. So Colleen, just as we kind of wrap up here, I'm curious, Colleen, in terms of, this isn't a Yield Hero, contest question. This is just an overall. The part that I always find interesting with this is just, winning that Yield Hero contest proves that that you have pushed that boundary in terms of profitability and you want to keep that. So I am curious, for any grower, what's something that you've picked up maybe over the last little bit as seeing growers through this contest that you can talk to your growers about that say, what, this is something that I think you should try, that even if you're not going to do the contest is probably worth doing.
One of the biggest things, and the record soybean grower talked about it, is do plots. I think that's just a big thing, and that's such a strength of our Pioneer team. In my area alone, I have over 50 PKP, so product knowledge plots that we're going to do. And, like he said, we all as an industry think we have great products. We all show up with really impressive numbers and sell sheets. But until you know how something performs in your area, you're kind of still playing a bit of a guessing game. So, the Yield Hero contest is a great way to get people engaged in doing plots. But I think the ones that have long-term success really commit to that and to testing out things in their local area. So our agencies do a phenomenal job. We have a lot of plots out there, but the more the merrier. We're always happy to have more data.
Well, I think, Greg, it goes to, what the Pioneer brand really is in terms of, kind of working with growers and trying to find out what does work in their area. Colleen mentioned, in terms of, Alex talking about how many plots he does. He was talking at least 10% of his acres he is doing something new with. He is trialing, he is doing that. And I did the math in my head, and I was like, that is going to be a tough conversation to go home to if I say I would like to take 10% of our acres to try things. But he's proof it works. Is that something you'd think too, or where do you sit?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's important to try something. Now, I don't tend to put a percentage on things, right? Because, you start doing the math, and 10%, and sometimes that's a really high number. But I think it's important to get growers to start trying things, because I think, the one thing that I see as an agronomist is the amazing yield potential that's out there in the crops, right? And I get to see so much stuff, whether that's in our plot work or in fields and side-by-sides, or just in the scouting that we kind of do across fields, how incredible some of our potential is, right? And I think a lot of the time we don't recognize it. We leave something on the table. Sometimes we rush in the spring, right? And sometimes we make mistakes by doing stuff that we shouldn't, or leaving out something that we should have done. And I think, just not sticking to a plan, right? But I think we got to start thinking about doing stuff a little bit differently, not just doing it the way we've always done it because that's the way we've always done it, right? Trying something new. But when you try something new, you got to be able to evaluate it too, right? So that's where this kind of on-farm plot thing, you got to prove it to yourself. And when Alex talked to us, it wasn't just that he was trialing stuff. It was he had goals where it was like he wanted his ROI to be 3-to-1, and it also had to do it 3 years in a row to prove it to be before he would adopt it as a farm practice. And I think if we started doing more of that, you would see bigger leaps and bounds, and they wouldn't just be attributed to this is a great, growing season one-off type thing. It would actually be real progress that we're making forward, and progress beyond just the genetic progress that we know is there, but now into the management side of things, and being reliably able to control two of those things is pretty awesome.
No, it certainly is, and it's a really energizing group to be a part of, with all of you folks and everybody else, just to be able to sit down, talk through practices, talk through what is possible. Just to make you think, I think, that, wow, if maybe I did something, as you talked about, tweak just a little, maybe I could get there too. So with that, Colleen, Dallas, Maggie, Greg, thanks very much for joining the podcast today.
Thanks for joining us.
And that's it for this episode of the Pioneer Made to Grow podcast. If you haven't already, you want to subscribe either from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you happen to get your podcasts, or at the Corteva Canada YouTube channel. And don't forget, if you ever need more information or advice, just ask your local Pioneer rep or visit pioneer.com/Canada.